I'm Joy Mayer, and I'm the director of the Trusting News Project. The work that I do is about demystifying how people decide what news to trust, figuring out what factors influence what news people choose to trust, where they spend their trust, and then training journalists, empowering journalists to actively demonstrate credibility and earn trust. Most journalists are really surprised to find out how little people understand about how the news works. A lot of people really do think that we pay our sources, that we actively suppress information we disagree with and highlight information we agree with. That when we use an anonymous source, not even us knows who that source is. There's just so much that we're very influenced by corporate funding and by the people who pay for our work as we decide what news to cover. And the truth, of course, is that all of those things are sometimes true. We have to recognize as journalists that there's some news that is not worthy of trust. There's some information out there that is not reported ethically and responsibly. Most of us, however, are in this business because we think news helps communities live their lives more fully, and it's up to us then to explain why we're worthy of people's trust. Gallup has been surveying people about trust in media since the 70s, and it actually peaked in the 70s a few years after Watergate and has been declining ever since. So the decline of trust in institutions in general and in journalism specifically is not a new problem. It's amplified because people have so many options for where to get their news, and because they don't have the same relationship with news providers as they once did. They consume one story, one headline at a time without even really understanding who's delivering it to them. We consume information so quickly and in sort of a curated fashion, and social media allows us to just have this very sort of haphazard way of finding information. And what it means is that people don't develop the relationships they used to with specific news organizations. In addition to that, we have a culture of politics in which some people in power believe that by putting down news media, by billing themselves as the only ones worthy of trust, that their message gets out more strongly, and so that culture definitely has an impact on trust in news as well. I think the first step is to be willing to answer feedback. When you hear from people about fake news or a liberal bias or why you charge for the news or any one of the million complaints people have, it's really easy to just kind of blow those off and hope that if we keep doing really good work, people will find it and find it credible. And instead, it's so important that we take time to meet people where they are and offer some explanations. Validate people's questions. Thank you for your question. That's interesting. Can you give me an example of that? Too often, people, when they level criticism at journalism, very often it's sort of the industry, the media overall, and what they really have in mind is national political coverage. And so I think especially for local journalists, if you're willing to differentiate yourself from that and to say, here's the work that we're doing in our newsroom today, can you give us an example of how we could do better? And just be willing to tell the story of the work that you're doing and why it matters. I think that can do a lot of good. When newsrooms are willing to say, here's why we did this, here's the process of doing this. The Washington Post has a really great series going called How to Be a Journalist, and they'll take you behind the scenes of their Roy Moore investigation in Alabama and how one of the reporters was actually from Alabama and how they got the idea and the process they went through. And plenty of people really do think that the media was in on some conspiracy to bring Roy Moore down, but it would be hard to watch that video and come to that conclusion. Some of the people with the most strident views would never watch the video and don't believe anything the Washington Post publishes. Those people aren't my primary concern. My primary concern is the people who do want to be responsible consumers of information and don't know where to turn, and it's up to us to help them make that decision. One of the things we're finding that just works so well for journalists, especially in local communities, is to bring their communities along as they're reporting, to ask for help setting their agenda. What would you like us to report? But also with specific stories, what are the questions you want to know? What experience do you have that might help us as we do this? And share in that process. We can't tell. We need your expertise and experiences in order to be able to tell this story. That it changes your relationship. It changes the investment people have in information. Also hosting conversations. A lot of times when you say to journalists, well, what do you hope happens as a result of this story? What they say is, well, we hope it gets people talking. And there's a real opportunity for journalists to be the hosts of those conversations, or to take their information they're learning into the places people are already talking about that issue. And that's a different set of skills than being a reporter, but it's an important part of why we think journalism matters. We all could talk easily, I think, about interpersonal relationships and how you go about learning to trust someone. So, you have to listen as much as you talk, because no one wants to hang out with someone who just talks all the time. You want to be responsive to what you hear, so you tell more stories and invite more conversation around things that you have in common. You have to get to know someone before you know what you have in common. You don't ask someone you just met to walk your dog for a week while you're out of town. When someone is new in the neighborhood, you don't say, hey, come walk my dog for a week. You have to earn the relationship that you want to build with them. And I think there are a lot of things that we do as people that we forget as a brand. We think we can just show up on a new social platform and everyone will follow us and love us. We think that when we're showing up on a social platform, that our role there is to broadcast, when really being social involves listening and responding, not just talking. So I think there's a lot that I think we forget sometimes to act like human beings.